Welcome to the Unstoppable Product Pioneer Podcast, where we bring product and UX managers, designers, business executives, and strategists together to unlock the power of strategic alignment. I'm Tamara Stoltz, and I am on a mission to empower you to drive meaningful, measurable, and impactful outcomes by aligning business and product strategies. In each episode, I sit down with industry experts who share their experiences, failures, and wins, giving you the insights and tools you need to ensure your alignment drives real business results. It's time to own your expertise, step into your power, and become unstoppable. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Unstoppable Product Pioneer Podcast. Today, we have a really exciting show. I had the opportunity to sit down with Brian Elfrink, who is the Director of Product Management at Experian and has over 20 years of experience within the HR technology industry. And he's been a leader within product teams, departments, organizations, and responsible for collaboration, and was successfully responsible for collaboration with internal teams and external stakeholders to identify recommended product enhancements. So I'm super excited to have Brian with us today, and I really appreciate him taking time from his very busy schedule to be with us. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you. It's nice to be here with you tomorrow. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for reaching out and thinking of me, and hopefully I can offer some insights and some guidance that can be useful for the listeners. So I'm excited about today's session.
Absolutely. Yeah, Brian came to mind right away as I was thinking about this podcast, because he was a leader, a product leader in the first job that I had. Brian was a product leader in the company, and so he came to mind right away, and I know it's going to be a very insightful, valuable episode. So thanks so much for being with us. I want to start a little bit with just tapping into your background and who you are, how you got into product management, and just a little bit about what got you to where you're at today.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, I have a very unique sort of odd path, I think, and maybe others out there have shared something similar in terms of how they got to product. But I actually went to school for accounting and finance and spent the first decade of my professional career in FP&A, and then was presented with an opportunity to move into a product management role based on just having worked with the product team so closely in my finance capacity, being familiar and understanding of the market, the trends, the drivers of that particular product. And I think they saw something in that collaboration that I had with him, and viewed me as somebody who could be successful in that role. So I took a leap of faith and accepted that role. And here I am now, having done product management for another decade, basically. But ultimately, having that background in finance and accounting has served me incredibly well throughout my career, continues to do, has helped tremendously when formulating product strategy and really understanding the finances behind it and what drives it, helping me to size markets, etc. So it's proved really beneficial. But yeah, if you would have asked me when I first started in the professional world if I would ever be in product, I would have said no, and probably would have said I don't even know what product is, to be honest. Yep. But it's been a great journey.
Wow.
I'm really happy where I'm at. So
that's awesome. That's really awesome. Okay, so we're looking at the title of today's podcast, which is Product Strategy and Product Roadmap Practices for the Digital Age.
Yeah, so I thought it would be helpful to just share my perspective on, and hopefully this pertains to someone either getting started in product management, like I was just describing for my own self, or someone who's been managing a product portfolio for years. It's always a good reminder to, I think, take a step back and have a more simplified approach to this, because there is so much complexity that goes into a product launch or refining or redefining a existing product that sometimes we get lost in the details and forget to take a step back and start with establishing a general vision for where you want to take the product. The simple questions of defining what the product's for, who is willing to pay and utilize it, what does it stand for, what does it do, defining that overarching vision for what you're trying to set out to accomplish is really the first building block that's necessary to define and establish before you start moving into what is the strategy. Having that clear, broad, big vision about what you want to accomplish is where I recommend everyone either goes back to or starts with. And I think as a part of that exercise and defining that vision, you're also able to help the business understand why would this be something that we would want to invest in, right? As product managers, you always have to have that in the back of your mind is it's going to take resources, financial, people to execute the delivery of where you want to take a particular product, and being able to articulate a vision very clearly to leadership that helps them understand how this will be beneficial to the company really helps them buy into why they should or could or would want to invest in a particular product offering. And then I think once you've established that vision, then you start to build out that strategy that drives that vision forward. And I think there's a handful of critical components to delivering and taking that big vision and breaking it down. And I think there's four sort of qualities that I would say are important when thinking about the vision. And it starts with thinking big. Like I said, by thinking big and broad, it increases your chances that people are going to buy into it, right? And then I think it's important to be inspiring. And one of the things that I would also make sure everybody in a product capacity understands or has an eye towards, and that's being passionate about the product that you're representing. Because when you're passionate, you create that inspiration with those other people that you're working with to bring that to reality. When you have an inspiring vision, it helps to resonate with those teams that you're working with. And then I think concise, you need to be easy to communicate and understand what that vision is. And then a shared vision to create that sense of motivation to bring people together. Because again, in a product capacity, the collaboration between different groups within the organization is really what makes a product successful or not. I think the product itself, of course, but you can't do that alone as a product manager. You have to have that buy-in from the cross-functional groups to bring it to reality and make it truly successful. And then I think once you've established that broad vision and you've got that buy-in from the critical stakeholders in the organization, what comes next? What comes next is the strategy definition, or taking that vision and basically identifying what the plan for executing that vision is. It captures how that vision should be realized and directs then the tactical execution that has to follow. And I think when I think about taking it from vision to strategy, that's when we start creating materials like the actual product strategy, putting pen to paper. That's when the product roadmap starts to be formed. That's when you are aligning your vision and strategy with the business goals and strategy. And I think that's where this podcast really is aimed at trying to educate business professionals across multiple different capacities on how important it is to have congruity with business strategy and product strategy, and let that business strategy influence your product strategy. And then like I mentioned, after strategy is defined, you've created your initial roadmap, you're aligned with the business strategy and the business model. Then it's tactical, right? How do you start building out your product backlog, your epics, your user stories, etc., creating workflows, diagrams, visualizations, user personas, and then really figuring out, okay, now I've got a defined vision where I want to go with this. I've got a strategy that aligns with the business objectives and goals. And then you start breaking down those tasks to actually deliver and execute the building of that particular product. This approach has served me really well in my product management career in multiple different capacities, whether it was innovating an existing product or creating a brand new product. We're in the midst of a product launch now that is creating a massive amount of interest in the market. But it's because we did all of that due diligence leading up to it and answering those critical questions, establishing that vision, deriving a strategy from that vision, and then really creating a practical, precise approach to execution. So that's really what I wanted to share is just, again, I look at it and say, sometimes we get in our own way with overthinking things, and really a simple approach to product management and product launch, product design, it really can be and should be a basic approach, because oftentimes we get in our own way, like I said. So that's my 2 cents, at least.
That's huge. That's huge. Wow. I mean, there's so much there to unpack, but in a perfect situation or a successful, I should say, scenario, that sounds like perfect. That sounds great.
Yeah,
Um,
and don't get me wrong. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into all of that, but the framework itself is very simplified.
right. So
And
I want to tap into the challenges because
yeah,
that if we could all follow the framework that Brian just laid out for us, we'd all be so super successful. Really, right? So like you said, it's not that complicated. It's pretty basic, but we're dealing with people, right?
yeah,
So what happens? I would say number one, what are some challenges that you've run into throughout? I would even say throughout the second stage of the strategy. You have the vision, products created the vision that they want to execute on. You're at the strategy step phase. What are some challenges that you've encountered and run into within that space of coming to the business strategists and to leadership and presenting your vision and idea? And what are some ways that you were able to work together and collaborate with business and leadership to figure out a way to either find the middle ground or compromise or successfully convince them that this is a successful way for us to drive?
yeah. And I think there's a myriad of challenges, right? Time, resources, funding, etc. And depending on the type of organization that you're in, there's layers of bureaucracy that come along with getting through some of those toll gates of execution. But I think having that very clear, concise message that is easy to articulate, easy to understand, you've done your homework up to that point, right? I think back to some of the building blocks on executing strategy, making sure you're understanding the market, understanding the drivers that relate to monetization of the product itself, answering some of those key questions on why would somebody buy this? Why would they use it? So again, it seems very basic, right? But in order to get through some of those challenges, you have to answer those basic questions and be able to provide that information to those that are responsible for making the ultimate decision on a go or no go, right? Having a defined process, right? So competing priorities in a larger organization can be challenging too, right? You most likely are working with a team of product managers that have responsibilities for individual product portfolios. Everybody wants to be able to move their product line forward, but you're most likely limited in terms of financial resources available to invest in product innovation, growth, etc. So again, do your homework, come correct with clear, concise information around why this is an investment worthy of making. And I think that's having presentation materials, a process associated with that, and evaluating internally opportunities for investment is so process is really critical there to get through some of those challenges. But again, I think, like I said, come correct, make sure you've done all of your due diligence, because a well buttoned up story that again is easy to understand, is clear in terms of the benefits to the organization for why they should invest in a particular product area, makes that conversation a whole heck of a lot easier.
And I think it's so interesting because you mentioned come and do your homework. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on or your experience with different scenarios of product managers or representatives from product management coming to leadership, presenting their vision and idea for a new product, feature, prioritization, enhancement, whatever it is, and they're pushed away. And then they take it personally. So, can you talk to the importance of when it's appropriate to bring in emotions when it comes to product management and product leadership, and what are some like important traits or behaviors to practice as a leader in product when it comes to separating your own like emotional feelings on your vision or idea from staying focused on the success of the business and making it about the business and the product and not about your own like personal idea.
What Yeah, I
That makes
love
sense.
that question. I think that's awesome. It's hard, right? Like I mentioned earlier, finding a particular product or organization that you truly have passion for is such a key to professional enrichment and really work-life balance and all of that, right? So when you find that, it's hard sometimes to be able to separate that in that particular situation that you outlined. But I think it's really important to always just remember in the back of your mind, this is business. It's not personal. There's nothing personal about this, right?
Mhm.
And although I may be super passionate about this particular opportunity that I'm putting forth, the leadership team that's responsible for making those decisions, they've heard that from other folks most likely as well, right? And so they're tasked with what is going to strategically align our objectives and help us to achieve those goals, whether it's more efficiently, faster, has longevity associated with it. There are so many different decision points that the leadership team is having to go through to make. You have to trust that they're making the appropriate decision that aligns with the business goals. And again, this isn't personal. I may have ownership over this particular product portfolio or this particular product area, but at the end of the day, it is still business. This is still about the organization and whether or not it aligns with our strategic objectives as an entire entity, not just Brian, right? And honestly, I would take that personally as not personally as but as a challenge for me to find something new or go back to the drawing board and make that particular pitch or proposal more worthy or attractive to the overall leadership team, right? So as a challenge to, you know, rethink it potentially or look for other opportunities that may be more accretive to achieving the overall strategy for the business. But again, there's nothing personal in this. And I think it would behoove everyone to just always remember that this isn't about you as a person or reflective of you in any way. This is about making the appropriate business decisions for the entity.
That's big. And what can you tell our listeners about when it comes to understanding, like, I don't necessarily know as a product manager or product leadership, product management, a leader within the product space. I have to trust that at the end of the day, the business needs to know what is going to move the needle for us and how is this going to affect the bottom line. And I had an idea. I have to trust that if it wasn't accepted right now, there's a reason for it and there's a bigger picture being taken into account that I might not be aware of. But have you ever encountered a situation where you come back to the drawing board and are still confused or still don't understand why or are feeling stuck about that's not aligned with what we're trying to do, then what is? And going back to leadership and just not really getting like the proper answers. Can you talk to like situations where maybe leadership teams are not as accessible or as open to making the strategy or the overall vision or reasons for decisions being made, not being as open and transparent about those things, and how people can navigate those situations without getting stuck and not getting frustrated that they are maybe hitting a wall or not successfully getting the information from leadership that they need.
Yeah, and so personally and thankfully, I haven't really encountered that in my professional career. I've always had leadership teams that are very accessible. I've had the privilege of working in organizations where it was very clear what the vision and the overall business strategy is for that particular enterprise. And so I never really felt like I was in a position of misalignment or not understanding what we were trying to achieve as a overall collective. So yeah, thankfully for myself, I've been in great positions and worked for great companies with great leaders that have really been very open and receptive of my professional feedback. And I wish I had a better answer.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I consider myself really lucky. And I guess I would venture to say that if an individual finds himself in that particular situation, you need to ask yourself, or am I in the right role? And I think that's something that just professionally we all should make sure that we're challenging ourselves with that self-evaluation that says, whether it's professional aims or growth aspirations or your personal beliefs structure, whatever it is, if all of that doesn't align, maybe you're not in the right place. But thankfully, again, for me, I've been in great organizations with great leadership teams that have been inspiring. They've been great mentors, and given me every opportunity to succeed. So I've been truly lucky.
That's awesome. That's amazing. That's also probably credit to you in the way that you come in and approach things and the value that you provide. So you get the credit for that also. I want to ask you a question that I hear a lot, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. When it comes to actually executing on a roadmap, we see the product roadmap. What have you found to be a successful format, like technically, practically, like pen and paper? Like when you create a product strategy roadmap, what have you found to be the most successful format in doing so?
Oh man, that's a great question too. In terms of like technical formats, there are obviously a ton of great software options out there. Still, honestly, like we defer to utilizing PowerPoint in a lot of different situations to be able to communicate internally, even externally, information about the product roadmap. Part of me, and I don't even know if I should say this as a product manager, but I hate roadmaps because there's so much fluidity and
You can say
things.
that here. You
Yeah,
can say
like
that
let's
here.
just be
Product
real.
roadmaps are not sacred documents that stay on the shelf and are not untouched.
it-
100%.
Things change at such a like constant rate, and I'm sure this is applicable in other industries, not just HR technology. The rate of change, whether it's new technologies being available that will be accretive to how we're developing software, competing priorities is constant. I'm in an industry that's heavily influenced by regulation. And so if a mandatory compliance update happens, that is going to disrupt what we currently plan because we have to do that. So yeah, I think we have to have that as part of trying to establish our vision and strategy and create those artifacts. But the only true, I think, constant for product roadmaps is that they're not constant. Things are
Mhm.
fluid. It changes all the time. And that's I can put one together and have some degree of confidence at that point in time that the next 6 months are going to look exactly like this. But I know damn or darn that that's going to change. And that's just the reality of it.
And then what happens when it does change? Do you have a process for then
It-
realigning and having a feedback loop with leadership to make sure that you're
yeah,
still on track?
yeah, that absolutely has to be part of it. And it's not just the leadership team, it's the entire organization needs to understand, especially those that are prospecting for new clients, right? Our sales team, our solutions engineering team, those that are on the front lines, they need to have that information readily available and accessible. And so creating those pathways to communication internally, that's probably one of the most critical aspects of product management is making sure all stakeholders are always aware of where things currently stand, where we're headed. And the product roadmap does do that effectively in terms of allowing that dissemination of critical information to key stakeholders to be able to take that and discuss it with prospective clients.
Right.
It's challenging though, right?
And you have a big team, right? You're working at a big corporate company. This is not everyone's in a small office and can hear each other
That's
from the
right.
other room and down the hall and
Yeah,
just
and remote work is it's great, but it's also challenging in that regard too. I honestly miss those in-office conversations and being able to get up and go talk to a developer about a particular capability that we're working on or whatever. But yeah, I think that's a kind of just to elaborate on the point about the criticality on communication when you're in that remote environment and I spend all day on Teams or whatever, it's even more important to make sure that as things change and the fluidity of that roadmap happens, that we are constantly communicating about that change.
yeah. Does your team run any collaborative workshops?
Probably not to the degree that we could. I think there is always opportunity to look for ways to improve team continuity and efficiency and make sure that we're working in an optimal space to deliver what we are aiming to deliver. Yeah, I think there's certainly room for opportunity and improvement in that regard.
Right. Well, this is amazing. So much to think about. This is great.
Yeah, this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? And again, in terms of basics, right? But hopefully, there's been a nugget out there in the conversation that even an experienced product person has been doing this for a long time, and that's kind of the way I approach this too. Is oftentimes I need to go back and take a step back and say, even though I've been doing this for a long time, refer back to materials that helped me along the way. I think one of the things that I wanted to offer to the audience today was a book that really helped me. When I went from finance and accounting into product management, I went and scoured like the internet to find what I hope were going to be the most useful reference materials and books for me to read about what that truly meant to be a product manager. And one of them really stood out and continues to do. I continue to reference it all the time. And it really does have that kind of simple approach to framework that I found easy to understand. That really resonated with me. But it's a book called Strategize, and the author is Roman Pichler. That's Pichler. It's a pretty short book, but it did tremendous for me in my career. And again, it's something that I continue to reference and go back to. I actually just picked it up last week just because I was having some consternation or challenge with a particular thing. And I was like, I remember something in this book, even though I read it several years ago, and was able to pull back up and help me level set. So I just thought I'd throw that out there too.
Yeah, strategize. Here, 1 second. I'm putting in the link here. That's not clickable, but there we go. Strategize, product strategy, roadmap practices. Super. Okay, we'll put the link in the description below for everyone to go check it out. That's really awesome. Yeah, no, and I appreciate you giving us a practical resource to go and check out. But I'm sure, just like me, I'm just sitting here absorbing and taking it all in because there's so much there. What, in 30 minutes, you managed to cover just an incredible amount. And within the framework, like you said, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. But just sticking to the framework, doing our homework, making sure that we're aligned internally as a team, as a department, coming to leadership and showing them and talking to them in language that they understand and showing them numbers that they understand and not using our product management jargon.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess one other bit of wisdom that I would impart: never stop learning, right? And I know that's a little cheesy, but it's so critically important, right? Especially as I was talking about the roadmap and the fact that things are so fluid and technology advancements happen so quickly. It's critical in a role like this, or really any professional role, to continue to challenge yourself to learn. And that extends to our personal lives too. But I think it's important to continuously seek that ongoing education, whether it's listening to a podcast like this or reading a book like we just mentioned, or whatever it might be. Take advantage of opportunities that maybe your organization offers for additional certifications or trainings. Like, that's so critical to professional development and being able to execute at a high level, really, for any given role.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. Okay, so for everyone that's watching and listening and wants to get in touch with Brian and thank him for this incredible podcast and his wisdom and insights, Brian, what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, I'm out on LinkedIn. Should be easily identified. Got a pretty unique last name, I think. But yeah, LinkedIn's a great spot. Happy to connect with you out there. Feel free to send me a direct message if you'd like. But yeah, happy to connect there.
Super amazing. Wow, this has been great. Thank you so much for everyone that is listening, tuning in, and watching. I know that you're walking away with so many valuable insights and things to bring back to your team. Make sure to go check out that book and check out Brian's profile on LinkedIn. Shoot him a message and thank him for this awesome podcast. Thank you so much, Brian, for your time and your insights and wisdom. I know I personally have gained a tremendous amount and can't wait to watch the recording again and really take proper notes and do my homework. And yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You are very welcome.
Have a good day. Thanks.
You too.